Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into a topic that has really lingered in the public consciousness for years. We're looking specifically at what's known about Donald Trump's association with Jeffrey Epstein. And we're using a specific guide here.
Right.
A recent article titled, Trump and the Epstein Files, What to Know. And just to be clear, this isn't about us adding anything new or, speculating.
Yeah.
It's about taking this specific source, this article, and really understanding exactly what it lays out for us.
That's exactly right. Think of this article as our map for this discussion. It pulls together various strands of public information, things that were out there when it was written,
Right.
covering, the nature of their past relationship, highlighting details from some recent document releases, and even touching on a very current, pretty high-profile claim related to all this.
Right.
So our mission here is, well, it's straightforward. We're here to act as your guides through the facts and the details presented just within this document.
Just this one source?
Just this source. We'll explore the timeline it outlines, look at the specific points it emphasizes, and make really sure we stick strictly to what this one article tells us. No outside info, no taking political sides.
Exactly. So think of this as like a shortcut to being well-informed specifically about what is actually stated in this one piece of reporting. We want to help you get the essential, confirmed piece of the puzzle directly from this source. Help you understand what it highlights as surprising or, significant. Yeah. And hopefully you walk away feeling clear on its presentation of the topic. So let's jump right into what this article lays out about Trump and the Epstein files for you.
Let's do it.
So to really understand the context the article is setting up, it starts by reminding us who Jeffrey Epstein actually was.
Right, the basics first.
Yeah. It describes him as, well, a wealthy financial advisor, someone known to be connected to high-profile businessmen, politicians.
So it places him firmly in those kinds of elite circles.
Exactly. Right away, the article sets that stage.
Yeah.
It explains how he, moved in those circles, the kind of social and financial world he inhabited.
And crucially, the article immediately highlights the really severe legal issues Epstein faced because, that forms the backdrop for any of these associations we're talking about.
Absolutely. Essential context.
Yeah. It points at his arrest in July 2019. The charges were sex trafficking and sex trafficking conspiracy. And what the source really emphasizes here is that these 2019 charges, they were significantly more expensive, much more serious than his earlier legal troubles.
Okay, so it makes that distinction clear.
Very clear. It provides that context, mentioning he had pleaded guilty before to 2 solicitation charges. I think it was about a decade earlier.
Correct, 2008. Yeah.
2008, right. And served a relatively short jail sentence in Florida for that. So the article really positions the 2019 arrests and those charges as a major escalation compared to his previous legal issues.
And on those specific 2019 charges, the article gives a bit more detail about the accusation itself, doesn't it?
It does. It describes the core allegation that Epstein allegedly created this network starting back in the early 2000s, where he abused dozens of underage girls. It specifically mentions his homes in Manhattan and Palm Beach.
Okay.
And it also notes the accusation included paying victims to then recruit other girls for him. I mean, it's a really grave picture of the alleged crimes that the source uses to frame the whole context here.
Yeah, it definitely sets a very serious tone.
And the article notes that despite these incredibly serious charges, Epstein pleaded not guilty.
He did.
And as most people know, he died in his Manhattan correctional cell in August 2019. This was while he was awaiting trial.
Right.
The source states the official cause was determined to be hanging himself. So this is the grim conclusion, the end of his life and the legal process he was personally facing as reported in the article. And that really underscores the seriousness that led to all the public interest in his associates.
Okay, so that's the background on Epstein himself, laid out by the source. Now, the article pivots, moving from Epstein to detailing what is known, according to this source, about Donald Trump's relationship with him. It describes them as individuals who were known to have socialized, within the same high-profile circles.
Yeah.
And this association, according to the article, it began way back in the late 1980s.
Late 80s, wow.
And reportedly continued for another 2 decades. So, that's a significant period of time where their paths were overlapping socially, based on this reporting.
Yeah, 2 decades is a long time. And the article doesn't just say, they were in the same circles. It gives more color, more detail on the nature of their interaction.
How so?
Well, it mentions they reportedly partied together, dined together. Specifically, it notes they did this at their respective homes in Manhattan and also at Mar-a-Lago, Trump's place down in Florida.
And Mar-a-Lago comes up.
Yeah, suggesting travel between New York and Florida was, part of their association. It paints a picture of something more than just, bumping into each other casually at big events. It implies a level of personal socializing.
And there's a particularly vivid detail the article includes, doesn't it, from someone who observed them?
Yes, exactly. This observation, it quotes someone describing Trump and Epstein as each other's wingmen.
Wingmen, okay.
Yeah, that single word, it really gives you a picture, or at least suggests a certain dynamic the article implies they had on, certain social outings.
It certainly evokes an image.
It does. And the article also mentions they were photographed together at various social events over the years. It even highlights one specific example of Victoria's Secret party for models.
Okay.
These kinds of details presented in the article, they build this picture of a public and seemingly quite close association between the two men. An association that lasted for a considerable time, at least based on how the source reports that era.
So just to recap this first section based on the article, it really works to set that foundational understanding. It outlines who Epstein was, details the severe nature of those 2019 accusations compared to the earlier stuff.
Right, the escalation.
And then presents evidence, according to the source, of a long-standing public social connection with Donald Trump, characterized by shared events, dining, travel, and even that wingmen description.
Exactly. And this connection, as the article frames it, is the essential context. It's why there were so many questions and so much public interest after Epstein's later arrests and, the subsequent release of documents. It all stems from that reported history.
Okay, so we have this picture painted by the article of this multi-decade association. Now, here's where, as you read it, it gets really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Because things changed.
Right. The source details how that picture shifted, particularly when Epstein was arrested for that second, much more serious time in 2019.
Yes.
It states that at that point, Donald Trump was among, many public figures who quickly sought to distance himself from Epstein.
Which, the article notes, was a pretty common reaction among people who had associated with him, given just how severe those charges were. Understandable, you might say.
Yeah, but the article doesn't present a single, simple story about when this distancing might have actually started or, solidified before the 2019 arrest. That's where it gets complicated.
It really does. Instead, it presents different accounts, different stories regarding the timing of a potential break in their relationship.
Okay, like what?
Well, one account mentioned is Trump's own statement. Made after Epstein was taken into custody in 2019, he said he was not a fan of Epstein's.
Not a fan.
And claimed he had cut off ties to the financier before that July 2019 arrest. So that implies a break happened sometime before the final charges blew up publicly.
Okay, so that's one version of the timeline from Trump himself post-arrest. Does the article offer more specifics on that?
It does dig a little deeper into Trump's post-2019 statements, as reported. He's quoted saying they stopped talking 15 years earlier.
15 years.
15 years earlier. Without specifically stating why they stopped talking. But if you do the math, counting back from 2019.
15 years.
Yeah.
Gets you to around 2004.
Exactly, around 2004. So this gives a specific year, 2004, as a potential point where their communication, according to this particular account from Trump reported in the article, might have ended.
Okay, 2004. But you said there were different accounts.
Right. And this is key to how the article presents it. There isn't just one account or timeline laid out. It also includes Trump stating, at another point perhaps, that they had a falling out several years before Epstein pleaded guilty in 2008 to procuring a minor for prostitution.
Several years before 2008. That's less precise.
So much less precise than 15 years earlier from 2019, right? Several years before 2008 could mean, 2007, 2006, 2005, maybe even earlier. It could potentially overlap with that circa 2004 timeframe, or it could suggest a slightly different point of separation. The article just lays out these variations in Trump's own reported accounts of when the relationship supposedly ended.
So even from Trump's side, the timing reported isn't perfectly consistent in the source.
Not entirely, based on what the article compiles.
And does the article offer any potential explanations from other sources for a falling out, maybe around that earlier 2004 timeframe?
It does. It brings in some external reporting. It cites the Washington Post.
Oh.
The Post had reported that back in 2004, the two businessmen, Trump and Epstein, were apparently involved in a rivalry over a property. an oceanfront Palm Beach property that was being sold out of bankruptcy.
A business deal gone sour.
Potentially. Well, the article presents this reported rivalry as a possible concrete reason, reported by another news source, for a potential falling out that actually aligns pretty well with that 2004 timeframe mentioned in one of Trump's accounts. It adds a specific business context to the potential end of their association.
Interesting. So a possible business reason around 2004. Are there other accounts mentioned in the article for why they might have fallen out?
Yes, there's yet another account included, which adds, another layer of complexity in trying to establish a definitive timeline before 2019.
Okay, what's this one?
This account comes from Sam Nunberg. He's identified in the article as a former Trump aide.
Right.
Nunberg is quoted as saying that Trump actually barred Epstein from Mar-a-Lago.
Barred him? Why?
The reason given in this account, as reported in the article, is that Epstein had allegedly recruited a young woman who worked at the Palm Beach resort, recruited her to give him massages.
Okay, that's a different reason entirely. And the timing on that.
Nunberg also stated, according to the article, that Trump told him this ban happened years before the police investigation into Epstein became public.
Years before.
Years before. And the article helpfully notes, referencing that Washington Post report again, that the police investigation apparently began just a few months after that 2004 property rivalry.
Well.
So, if Nunberg's account is accurate as reported, it suggests a break tied to Epstein's conduct at Mar-a-Lago happening sometime before late 2004. Maybe mid-2004, or even earlier, which adds yet another potential reason and time frame for distance emerging between them.
Wow. So what this section of the article really drives home is that, well, while there's a clear pattern of distancing after the 2019 arrest.
Definitely. Public statements downplaying the relationship.
Right. But the picture of when and why any break occurred before that, it's actually quite complex just looking at the information presented within this single article.
It is. The article presents these multiple accounts side by side.
You've got Trump's own varied statements,
Yeah.
15 years before 2019, so around 2004. Then several years before the 2008 plea, which is fuzzier. Then you have the reported 2004 property dispute from the Washington Post.
A potential business motive.
And then the former aide's account of a Mar-a-Lago ban, maybe even before late 2004, tied to conduct with an employee.
Right. The article lays out these different narratives. It doesn't try to definitively say this is what happened. It shows that establishing a single, clear timeline for a pre-2019 falling out, based just on the reporting it compiled, is actually pretty challenging.
It really highlights the sometimes conflicting nature of the information out there.
Absolutely. The article doesn't reconcile them, it just presents them, highlighting the varied information circulating about the history of their relationship and when it might have ended well before the really dramatic events of 2019. It leaves you, the reader, with a sense that the story of when they stopped associating isn't simple, based on what this source pulled together.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and move on to another major area the article discusses, something that got a lot of attention. The release of documents often called the Epstein files.
Yes, a huge point of public interest. The source notes that in early 2024, a federal court ordered the release of, I think it was over 900 pages.
Over 900 pages, yeah, of what had become commonly known as the Epstein files. And this event, it generated massive media attention at the time.
Understandably. These documents, according to the article, were previously under seal or, heavily redacted in earlier legal proceedings. So their release was seen as potentially revealing new information.
And what kind of information did they contain, according to the article?
Well, the release included names of individuals associated with Epstein and also with his longtime girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Right, Maxwell.
And the article provides that context on Maxwell, reminding the reader she's currently serving a 20-year prison sentence for her role in trafficking young girls to Epstein. So the release of these documents and the names within them was presented as potentially shedding more light on the whole network around Epstein and Maxwell.
And this is where the article gets specific about some high-profile names appearing in those files.
Exactly. It explicitly states that Donald Trump's name appeared in these documents, the ones released in early 2024. It also notes that the names of former President Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew also appeared in these released documents. This is presented as a key factual point from the document release. These prominent names were present within the files unsealed.
Now, it's important to clarify what appeared means here, based on how the article presents it.
Yes, very crucial. And the article seems to imply this, and it's how we should understand it. A name simply appearing in these documents doesn't automatically mean wrongdoing. It doesn't detail the specific nature of the connection necessarily.
Right. These are huge files.
Exactly. Thousands of pages, potentially. Emails, deposition transcripts, witness testimonies, logs, you name it. So a name appearing means just that it was mentioned somewhere within that vast amount of material. The article focuses purely on the fact that the names were present in the released documents. It doesn't extrapolate beyond that based on the appearance itself.
Okay. Did the article mention other document releases besides that big one in early 2024?
It did. It mentioned subsequent releases. It states that in February, Attorney General Pam Bondi released hundreds more pages from the Epstein files.
Okay, another batch. Was there new information in that one?
Well, according to the article, officials acknowledged that much of the information released in that February batch had actually already made its way into the public domain somehow.
Ah, so maybe not entirely new.
Potentially not. Through previous reporting or earlier legal processes, the article gives examples of this kind of previously known information that was essentially re-released or confirmed in the February batch. Things like flight logs from Epstein's private plane, which, have been reported on extensively for years.
Right, those logs have been out there.
And also transcripts from victim interviews, so some of it was confirmation of already public stuff.
Okay, the article also mentioned something about potential limitations on what was released. A letter.
Yeah, an interesting detail. It mentions that Attorney General Bondi wrote a letter to FBI Director Kash Patel. And in that letter, she reportedly blamed FBI agents, specifically in New York, for preventing her office from disclosing more information from the files.
So she's suggesting there might be more information that wasn't released.
Based on Bondi's reported statement in the article, yes. It suggests there might be additional information that wasn't included in those releases due to external factors she cited, like interference from the FBI in New York. The article just reports her claim.
Got it. And there was one specific type of document the article really singled out in relation to these releases, wasn't there? Something about a phone book.
Yes, the phone book. A book containing phone numbers kept by Epstein. The article points out that this phone book was included in that February 2024 release.
Okay.
But it was entirely redacted, completely blacked out in the version made public at that time. Entirely redacted, according to the article. The fact that a document specifically listing contacts was released, but you couldn't see anything in it, is a pretty notable detail highlighted by the source.
But then the article connects this to something else, right? Something about it appearing before.
Exactly. And here's the kicker, drawing on previous public knowledge as reported by the source. While the address book itself was entirely blacked out in the recent release, the article states that when this same address book had surfaced and appeared in a court file a few years ago,
previously,
it was not redacted in the same way. And according to the article citing this previous appearance, that earlier version contained 14 different numbers.
14 numbers for?
Associated with Donald Trump, his wife Melania, and others within Trump's inner circle.
Wow, okay. So the article points out this contrast. Recently released but totally redacted, yet previously seen in court files containing multiple Trump-related numbers.
Precisely. So the article presents the recent redaction alongside the information that its contents, including contact details for Trump and his circle, were actually known from an earlier, less redacted appearance in court records. It raises questions about, why it was fully redacted this time around.
So this whole section in the article, it effectively lays out the info related to the document releases as the source sees it.
Yeah.
The initial big batch in early 2024 where names like Trump's appeared. The subsequent February release, maybe less new information. The mention of potential barriers to disclosure from Bondi.
Right.
And that specific example of the Epstein phone book.
Right.
Released recently but redacted, yet known from before to have Trump's numbers.
Exactly. The article focuses on what it presents about the contents and the process of these document disclosures, compiling these different pieces to give you a sense of what became public record through these events, according to its reporting.
Okay. Now, stepping back from the documents themselves, the article also takes a look at how Donald Trump himself has spoken publicly about Jeffrey Epstein over the years.
Yes, his own words.
And it highlights a specific quote from way back, before all these accounts suggest their relationship might have cooled off or ended.
Right. The article pulls a direct quote from a New York Magazine interview. This was conducted way back in 2002.
2002. So right in the middle of that period, the article describes them socializing together.
Exactly. And in that interview, Trump is quoted calling Epstein a terrific guy.
Terrific guy.
He also added, according to the quote, that Epstein was a lot of fun to be with. So this quote from 2002 represents his public characterization of Epstein during the time their social association was apparently quite active, based on the article's earlier descriptions.
And the article includes another particularly striking line from that same 2002 quote, doesn't it?
It does, and it's quite memorable. Trump is quoted saying, "It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side."
Wow, many of them are on the younger side.
That specific quote from the 2002 interview is presented in the article. And its inclusion really highlights the stark contrast it provides when you view it through the lens of Epstein's later charges, which specifically involved underage girls.
Yeah, that quote hits differently knowing what came later.
Absolutely. And the article then pivots immediately to contrast this 2002 characterization with statements made much, much later, specifically after Epstein's 2019 arrest on those extensive sex trafficking charges.
Right, the not a fan comment.
Exactly. The source notes that after the arrest, Trump publicly stated he was not a fan of his, which is, a significant shift in public tone from calling him a terrific guy.
Huge shift.
And the article also references statements made by a lawyer for the Trump Organization, again following the arrest. This lawyer apparently said that Trump had no relationship with Epstein, stating they were not friends and did not socialize together.
No relationship, not friends.
These are presented as the public positions articulated by Trump and his organization after the gravity of the 2019 charges became apparent and public.
So the article really uses this juxtaposition, right? The before and after quotes.
Exactly. It uses the juxtaposition of these quotes and statements to illustrate the evolution, or maybe more accurately, the stark change in the public characterization of the relationship over time.
That 2002 quote, terrific guy, a lot of fun, and especially that line about liking women on the younger side, which the article makes sure to include. It stands in really sharp contrast to the distancing language used after 2019. Phrases like, not a fan, no relationship, not friends.
Yeah. The article presents these different statements clearly to show that documented shift in how Trump and his representatives publicly described his connection to Epstein before and after the severe allegations became so widely known.
It really highlights how public figures sometimes manage associations when those associates face serious legal trouble.
It does. The source uses these specific reported quotes and statements to show that documented change in narrative based on the media sources it was drawing from.
Okay, finally, the article brings us right up to a very recent development surrounding the Epstein files, which kind of illustrates how this topic keeps surfacing in public discourse, sometimes in unexpected ways.
Yeah, it never quite goes away, does it? It reports on a very public feud that was apparently unfolding between Elon Musk and Donald Trump.
Right, that feud.
And the article notes that amidst this disagreement, Elon Musk made a claim about the Epstein files. The article characterizes Musk as dropping what he claimed was a really big bomb.
A really big bomb. What was the claim, according to the article?
The specific claim made by Musk, reported directly in the article, was that, quote, the president appears in disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein's unreleased criminal files.
Unreleased criminal files.
Okay, and the article notes that Musk included some directives alongside this claim on social media, things like, mark this post for the future and the truth will come out. So this is presented as Musk's assertion made in the context of his public dispute with Trump.
Okay, so Musk makes this claim. But the article immediately adds some really crucial context and caveats, right? It doesn't just report the claim in isolation.
No, it's very careful. It states unequivocally, right after presenting the claim, that Musk offered no evidence, zero evidence whatsoever to support his accusation about new links between Trump and Epstein beyond what was already publicly known at that time.
Okay, that's a critical point the article makes.
Huge! The article highlights the complete lack of new supporting information provided by Musk himself for the supposed big bomb claim about unreleased files.
So it forces you, as the reader, to think, well, what was already publicly known about the Trump-Epstein link, according to this source?
Exactly. What might Musk have been referencing, even vaguely, or claiming to have more on, and as we've already covered from this same article.
Right.
What was publicly known at that point, as reported here, included their decades-long social association. The fact that Trump's name did appear in the released documents from early 2024, and that his contact numbers were known to be in Epstein's address book based on a previous appearance of that book in court files years ago, even though it was redacted in the recent release.
Got it.
So the article's key point here is that Musk's claim about unreleased files came with absolutely no evidence beyond this existing public information that the article itself had already detailed.
And the article adds even more context about Musk himself, doesn't it?
It does. It adds further context relevant to evaluating Musk's claim by referencing his past behavior on social media platforms. It states flatly that he has previously used social media to make and amplify false claims.
Okay, so the article includes that piece of information about Musk's history with claims.
Yes. It's presented right alongside Musk's recent claim about Trump and Epstein, almost as a caution flag, something the reader should be aware of when assessing the potential validity of this specific claim.
What are the official response? Did the article include that?
Yes. Finally, it includes the reported response from the White House to Musk's claim. According to the source, the White House dismissed it, called it an unfortunate episode for Musk.
An unfortunate episode.
That's the official reaction, as reported in the article.
So, putting it all together for this section. While the article reports that this claim was made by Musk, especially noting the context of his feud with Trump.
Right. It reports the event.
It immediately frames it. It surrounds it with what the source clearly sees as crucial context.
Absolutely crucial context.
The complete lack of new evidence offered by Musk beyond what the article has already presented as publicly known. The source's own note on Musk's history with making claims on social media.
Right.
And the official White House response dismissing it. So it presents the claim, but anchors it very firmly against the backdrop of existing reported facts and assessments provided within the article itself. It allows you, the reader, to understand the claim within that specific context presented by the source.
Precisely. The focus isn't on verifying Musk's claim one way or the other. It's on reporting that the claim was made and immediately noting the source's assessment of the evidence, or lack thereof, that Musk provided alongside it, especially relative to the publicly available information the article has already walked us through. It doesn't give the impression that the article validates the idea of some big secret in unreleased files based solely on Musk's unsubstantiated statement.
Okay, so we've taken this pretty deep dive into just this one specific source, the article Trump and the Epstein files. What to know. Really trying to understand exactly what information it presents about this complex, often talked about topic.
Yeah, we've covered quite a bit just from this one piece.
We walk through the background of Jeffrey Epstein as the article describes him, highlighting those severe charges against him in 2019, contrasting them with his earlier legal issues.
We then spent a good amount of time detailing what the article presents about Donald Trump's known social association with Epstein, describing it as spanning 2 decades, based on reports of, dining, traveling, being wingmen, attending specific events like that Victoria's Secret party, all as detailed in the source.
We definitely explored the different accounts presented within the article about when and why their relationship might have ended before 2019, noting those varying timelines offered by Trump himself the 15 years prior, several years prior to the 2008 plea.
Fuzziness there.
The reported 2004 property rivalry, and that former AIDS account of a Mar-a-Lago ban, showing how the article presents these multiple possibilities without necessarily resolving them.
We covered the specifics of the document releases in early 2024, highlighting that names of prominent figures, including Trump, appeared in those documents, while also discussing the subsequent February release, noting it included potentially previously public info, and that really interesting detail about the Epstein phone book entirely redacted in the recent release, even though it was known from a prior court appearance a few years ago to have contained multiple numbers for Trump, Melania, and others in his circle.
And we examined that striking contrast the article highlighted in Trump's own public statements about Epstein over the years. Specifically, that 2002 terrific guy quote, including the notable detail about younger women.
Yeah, that line.
Versus the post-2019 statements of being not a fan and having no relationship, showcasing that clear shift in reported public characterization.
And finally, we looked at that recent claim by Elon Musk about Trump appearing in unreleased criminal files. But we also carefully noted the crucial caveats the article itself provides right alongside it. Musk offering no evidence beyond what the article describes as already publicly known, the source's note on Musk's history with claims, and the reported official response.
So by focusing solely on this single source, our aim was really to give you a clear, specific picture of the publicly reported aspects of this connection, the document releases, the statements, all as compiled and presented in this particular article.
Exactly. We've tried to adhere strictly to what the document tells us, acting as, hopefully, impartial guides to the information provided within its pages without adding our own spin or outside knowledge.
Hopefully this deep dive has helped you quickly gain a thorough understanding of what this specific source lays out regarding Trump and the Epstein files. It really illustrates how various pieces of reported information, past associations, document contents as presented, public statements over time are brought together in reporting on a topic like this.
And it also shows how new claims related to it, like the Musk example, are sometimes framed against the backdrop of that existing reported knowledge.
And that brings us, I think, to a final question, something for you to consider. Based on the journey we've just taken through this one source, given the recurring emergence of details related to the Epstein investigations and the reporting on his public associations with prominent figures like Trump, alongside the sometimes, piecemeal nature of information releases and these public claims that pop up.
Yeah.
What does the ongoing, intense public interest in this topic and the specific way information about it continues to surface and be reported, what does that tell us about the broader dynamics? The dynamics between high-profile figures, accountability, and the way information flows, or sometimes trickles, in our digital age.
That's a really interesting question to leave people with, that interplay of history, legal proceedings, public narrative, and the constant churn of information.
Definitely something to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
Indeed. It's a complex picture.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the source material. We hope it's given you valuable insight into what is reported on this topic, specifically through the lens of this one article.